We are the Lab Doctors. I'm Amanda.
I'm Dorothy.
And I'm Zhao Yong.
We are biomedical researchers who realized we still have a lot to learn about science.
So why not join us on this quest?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lab Doctors podcast. So today we're going to be talking about a drug.
Okay, so this drug is called Paxlovid. I don't know if I pronounce it. I guess it sounds like COVID at the end. So it's Paxlovid. So if you don't already know, this was reported in Channel News Asia or maybe in just Singapore News around like 12th of Feb this year. And basically it's a newly approved and it's like the first approved antiviral drug for the treatment of COVID. So for those who don't know, like if you're confused between antiviral and what medications the doctor has been giving you in general for COVID, like I think most of the drugs that they give you are like treating your symptoms. So like cough syrup, Panadol for your headaches. But antiviral is supposed to reduce the viral load. Like it directly affects the virus itself. So not just treating the symptoms.
Right, like it hurts its ability to replicate and hence you would clear the virus faster.
Yeah, so this is an antiviral drug developed by Pfizer. In Singapore, like, it's prescribed and prioritized for those who are at higher risk of severe COVID-19 disease. Okay, so Pfizer is the company that came up with like one of your vaccinations.
Yeah.
So basically in my research, I was trying to find like the basic scientific data that we always see in the lab rather than like clinical trial data, but I couldn't really find any like in vitro studies. So this is what was shown, what was reported by Pfizer and then what Singapore HSA site is reporting on like why they have approved this drug for COVID-19 treatment. So basically, Pfizer and whoever they collaborated with conducted a clinical trial known as the phase 2 out of 3 or 2/3. I don't know what 2 out of 3 means.
isn't it phase 2 and phase 3?
Yeah. They just combine it.
Yeah.
I thought it's 2/3 of the of the trial. So okay, phase 2 or 3. It's called EPIC-HR. So this stands for Evaluation of Protease Inhibition for COVID-19 in high-risk patients.
Protease.
That's a stretch.
Yes, so I'll go into like why it's called protease inhibition later. But this was a randomized double-blinded study of non-hospitalized adult patients with COVID-19 who were at risk of progressing to severe illnesses. So the patients were randomized to receive Paxlovid or a placebo orally every 12 hours or twice a day for 5 days. And the results found that basically this drug was able to reduce the risk of COVID-19 related hospitalization or death by about 89% or 88.9% when the treatment was given within 3 days of the onset of symptoms.
Oh, that's quite a lot, right? Like 80% reduction.
89% reduction.
90%.
Yeah, 90% reduction. So this is again like for people who have not been hospitalized and they are comparing whether it helps to reduce hospitalization rate as well as reduce mortality rates.
We interrupt this podcast for a short message by the editor.
Hey, I just want to give a brief background on the ethics of clinical trials because Amanda is going to bring it up. Basically, if a drug or therapeutic has been shown to be highly efficacious against the disease that it is treating, then it is unethical for researchers to continue the clinical trial with a placebo arm or a standard of care arm because the risk of not treating the disease with this new drug is determined to be greater than the risk of adverse effects based on a predetermined set of metrics that was obtained from previous phases of the clinical trial.
Now back to your regularly scheduled podcast episode, I guess.
So basically they have one group that doesn't receive this drug and then one group that does receive this drug.
Yeah.
3 days after onset of symptoms.
Yes.
And then like the patients that receive this drug have 90% reduction in hospitalization and mortality. Then is it ethical for them to continue doing the...
Yeah, that was something I was thinking about. But I don't know if they have like newer trials now. Or maybe like since it's approved now, hopefully no one has to go through the placebo anymore.
I mean, it's still important to find out about like adverse effects and everything, but 90% is a lot, right?
Yeah, 90% is a lot. So in terms of number wise, right? So 0.8% 97% of patients who received the drug were hospitalized through 28 days following randomization. So this is 3 out of 389 hospitalized, and there were no deaths.
Wow.
How about the other group?
The other group, which is the placebo group, there were 7% of patients who were hospitalized or died. So this is 27 out of 385 that were hospitalized, and there were 7 subsequent deaths.
Whoa.
Wow.
Okay.
So I think more startling would be the number of deaths. I mean, like hospitalized is like 3 versus 27, but deaths is like 0 versus 7.
Yeah.
So it's quite significant.
Yeah.
And they also tried to administer this treatment regime like 5 days within the onset of symptoms, and they also achieved similar results.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, so within 3 to 5 days, you take the drug. It can help to lower your chances of needing to be hospitalized as well as lower the chances of death. So when we talk about like this drug is given within 3 to 5 days of the onset of symptoms, I feel like it's really targeting the high viral load, which is when your ART test is positive and it's reflected. You know, like how the ART line, right, the T line starts off faint and then becomes thick, and then after that, when it's recovering, you become faint again.
Yeah.
So it kind of reflects the
Amount of virus you're
Yeah.
releasing.
Yeah.
And in case people don't know, ART is antigen rapid test. So it's the test to find out whether or not there is the virus present in your nasal passage or throat, depending on the type that you're using.
In some countries, they call it rapid antigen test.
Rapid antigen
like-
test, rapid test kit in Malaysia. and-
FETs also.
Yeah.
I don't even...
Fast and easy.
Not fast or easy. 15 minutes. That's fast.
Oh, it's quite fast. It's like-
Compared to PCR.
oh yeah, that takes...
PCR is fast also, please.
PCR takes like 2 hours if you do it yourself.
Yeah,
But
not,
you can't, so you have to send it to the clinic and then it'll
that's
take
not
like...
easy.
at
So,
least-
you know, it's faster.
And can you administer
and
it yourself?
easier.
I feel like I don't dare to put it into my
Okay,
nose so deep.
fine.
I don't know how to do it.
Fair. I was just thinking about the whole PCR process.
But PCR is like more sensitive.
Yes.
Yeah, so you might be negative on ART and then you will still
Have a high PCR.
high PCR because you still have the dead virus, is it?
High PCR, low.
Low
Low
PCR. Oh my
PCR.
god. Positive PCR.
Positive PCR.
Thanks.
Yeah, as in it might already detect the RNA of the virus.
Yes.
So while you don't have enough viral load, there is the virus.
Yeah.
Okay, so overall what Pfizer has reported is that there's 0 deaths in patients who received Paxlovid, but 1.6% of deaths among those who received the placebo. Sadly. Thanks for whoever participated in the trial and was willing to be randomized.
And I guess it's you either get the drug or you get what's normal, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
You get standard of care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, it's not like they don't treat you at all.
Yeah. Okay, so for Singapore, what the Health Science Authority stated is that their in vitro data, which I'm not sure where they found because I can't find it, showed that Paxlovid is useful against the Delta and Omicron variants. So that's
Oh,
great.
That's great.
So what is this drug actually?
Yep.
Paxlovid comprises of 2, very hard to pronounce, nirmatrelvir, nirmatrelvir, in case anyone wants to research.
Okay.
2 nirmatrelvir, I'm just going to pronounce it like that, tablets, and 1 ritonavir tablets, ritonavir. This is like a spelling bee contest.
Yes. Oh yeah, so if you find drugs that end with vir,
Yeah.
generally that's an antiviral.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
VIR, right?
VIR, yeah.
If it ends with VIR, because it's like virus.
Virus,
oh,
yeah.
right. Okay, so these 2 types of tablets are co-packaged for oral intake. Basically, this nirmatrelvir is an antiviral medicine, and ritonavir will help to maintain the amount of nirmatrelvir in the blood level for the antiviral efficacy. Okay, sounds a bit chim, but let me go into how it works. So, for coronaviruses, including the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is responsible for COVID-19 disease, COVID-19 already has a disease word inside, but COVID-19. So these viruses, right, encode 2 proteases that are required for its replication.
We interrupt this podcast for a short message by the editor.
So in case you're wondering, a protease is an enzyme that catalyzes proteolysis, which is the process of cleaving a protein into smaller proteins. So this process typically either activates or deactivates certain enzymes, and as such activates or deactivates certain processes on a molecular scale.
Now back to your regularly scheduled podcast episode.
One of the main protease is called 3CL, which is chymotrypsin-like. But we don't need to go into detail. But okay, this 3CR protease is one of the main and highly conserved protease among all coronaviruses. This nirmatrelvir was found to inhibit the activity of this 3CR protease, and therefore it would be able to impact the replication of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And this was tested in physiologically relevant cell lines like the human bronchial epithelial cells, so this is found in your trachea, as well as the human adenocarcinoma-derived alveolar basal epithelial cells, which is also found in your lungs.
A549 for sure.
Yeah, A549, one of the commonly used cell lines in lung disease research.
Yeah.
Also, for mouse models, this is what I'm interested in, they found that oral administration of nirmatrelvir in mouse-adapted SARS-CoV-2 mouse models found that there was a reduction in lung viral titer, so there's less of the SARS-CoV-2 virus itself, and protected mice lung tissue from damage and weight loss. Okay, and so where does ritonavir comes in? Okay, so in our body, there is an enzyme called CYP3A4. It's a commonly heard of enzyme.
Commonly heard of.
Cytochrome P3A4.
Oh, okay. As in like CYP. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant
Cytochrome
like SIP, and I was like, commonly heard?
Yeah. CYP, cytochrome P. So, as in, I always hear of this enzyme, but I still don't know
But
what it
it's
does.
basically responsible for breaking down a lot of the drugs, right?
Yeah. Yes, so it's also responsible for metabolizing nirmatrelvir. And this enzyme is found in your livers in your liver and intestines. So ritonavir is a cytochrome P3A4 inhibitor, and therefore it will prevent the effect of cytochrome P3A4 that breaks down nirmatrelvir. So it helps to increase the amount of nirmatrelvir in the blood.
Okay. Yeah, so basically you take the nirmatrelvir. Is that
Yeah.
how do you spell it?
Nirmatrelvir.
Okay, nirmatrelvir. And then eventually your body will break down the nirmatrelvir.
Yeah.
Because that's how our body works. It metabolizes the drugs. But then because you don't want it to break down, because you want it to have more of an effect, that's where the second drug comes in, which is the ritonavir.
Ritonavir.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so the ritonavir blocks the breakdown of the drug, therefore making that nirmatrelvir circulate longer in your body.
Yeah, and also at higher concentrations. It like maintains it at higher concentrations so that it can help to fight the virus itself.
Yeah.
So for just an additional information, this ritonavir is also an antiviral drug that is used in the treatment of HIV and AIDS.
Oh.
So it's like not a new... Okay, and then I guess...
So I mean, it sounds real good, but then I mean, obviously there are reasons why they don't want to administer this drug on the general populace, but only limiting it to the severe cases, right? I mean, at least in Singapore.
I guess also for a shortage, like
maybe,
I don't know if there's a shortage yet, but maybe for now.
Yeah, but I was like predicting. It's because like, I mean, the drug is still relatively new. We don't really know what the adverse effects are, right?
Yeah. So for adverse effects, basically they found that there is no significant difference in the adverse effects of patients who have taken Paxlovid as well as just a placebo. So the common side effects are usually like nausea, diarrhea, headache, runny nose, and muscle pain. And basically a lot of the studies, what they find is that these oral antiviral drugs have quite mild and very few serious adverse effects. In contrast, right, they compare it to like looking at vaccination. For vaccination, there is also these kind of side effects. And for some people who are hypersensitive to vaccinations or they react adversely to it, then vaccinations poses an even larger threat. Also, the plus points of using oral drugs is that it can be produced in large scale and it does not require refrigeration during shipping.
Yes, cold chain.
Whereas if you know all the vaccines that we have been taking, right, they need to be shipped at a cold temperature. I can't remember what temperature. So
depends on the vaccine also. Some is like ultra cold chain, some is just cold chain.
yeah. So it's actually easier to distribute and and it may be less expensive than vaccines itself.
But that's it. I feel like we have this entire, in a sense, arsenal of stuff, and most people are actually not hyper responsive to vaccinations also. So still get vaccinated, still get your boosters if possible.
Yeah, so I think as in vaccination is still important, and then if you have taken all your vaccinations and you still happen to be in the high risk group, like you still have very serious symptoms and very high viral titer, then this is where the drug will come in. So
exactly.
So you have the option.
Yeah, it's an amalgamation of like both therapies.
Right.
And I also found one paper which studies whether Paxlovid is safe for the reproductive system.
All right.
So this study looked at the potential effects of the nirmatrelvir in quite a high dosage and whether it affects two things. Number one is the fertility of animals. I mean, they study in animals, it's not in humans yet. And number two is whether there's any effect on already pregnant animals and the development of fetuses and the reproductive
Functions.
yes, during the growing of the baby. Okay, so in this study, basically the first study which they looked at the fertility, like whether it affects getting pregnant or conceiving. So the male and female rats were given nirmatrelvir orally for 14 days prior to mating, and as well as throughout the mating phase until about 6 days of gestation, which means 6 days after they're pregnant, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And it kind of followed some ICH guideline, which is some guideline about like how it affects reproduction and stuff like that. So if you want, you can go and search about it. But basically, that's what their study did. And the second study looked at pregnant rats and rabbits who were given the drug orally from 6 days after gestation to about 17 to 19 days, depending on the animal.
Oh, yeah.
So in general, they found that there were no effects on male and female fertility or any effects on embryonic development in the rats, and there were no severe toxicity effects on the rats and rabbits. So generally, like, they find that this drug is quite safe for pregnancy or for fertility. But again, this is first studied in the animals, so it's yet to be observed, like study in the humans. So, but I think, generally, this is what animal models are about and how they help us to translate to human studies. So for now, I think it's quite safe for any pregnant people or people planning to
conceive.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
It's just great that we now have something else.
Yeah, like the first antiviral,
Yeah.
which is very important.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of researchers are trying to find, antivirals.
And as usual, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify. Like and comment would really help us out. You can also rate us on Spotify. Actually, I have no idea whether or not if we get 10 or more, the ratings will be public, but
Just
it
give
helps.
us 5 stars.
Yeah,
Wait, 5 stars or rate us 5?
rate us however you want to, but 5 stars is preferred.
Thanks.
You can also follow us on our social media, Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, and feel free to DM us any questions.
Alternatively, you can email us at thelabdoctors@gmail.com. We'll post all the articles in the episode description, so check that out. Thank you.
Bye.
Don't anyhow ask your doctors for Paxlovid. They might not be able to give it to you anyway. So
And you might not be the intended
audience.
audience. Patient.
Participant.
Yeah.
And don't go to the A&E unnecessarily.
Yes.
Bye.